Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller, the podcast. I'm joined by Seth.
Hey, welcome, guys. Thanks for finding us on the internet.
Now, these shows originally aired on Brookings Radio, but now they're all here for your enjoyment. I hope you like it.
There you go. Sit back, enjoy the show, relax. Let us know if you want to see anything on future shows. As we said, this comes out live in the Brookings area, but enjoy this archive episode.
Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. This week on Beer Untapped, we conclude our look at the 4 key ingredients in beer. We've done hops and malt, today water and yeast. Beer is mainly water, and that in itself makes it important. Local water supplies have helped define various styles of beer.
A lot of the popular styles that we know of today are really a derivative of the available water. The water around the city of Dublin is notoriously hard. The hard water actually lends itself to really robust stouts and thus Guinness. The Pilsen area has a notoriously soft water. That is where the origin of the Pilsner came from. And then Burton-on-Trent has a Burtonized water, or it's a type of salt. It's a type of residual hardness that sticks with the water. And that's very synonymous with English-style bitters.
Seth Koch there from Wooden Legs Brewing in Brookings. He says these days brewers can manipulate their water with various chemicals if they wish.
A lot of breweries, and Wooden Legs Brewing Company included, believe that the water is such a definitive part of a region that we prefer not to manufacture or remanufacture the water. We use Brookings water because that's who Brookings is, and our beers will continue to taste like that same water just because that's who we are. That's what we are.
From the land of sky blue waters, Rocky Mountains spring water, and there were others. Remember all that stuff? Actually, you may want some impurities in your brewing water.
Really, the water needs to be drinkable and needs to taste good. I mean, that's ultimately what beer is. It's mostly water anyway. So you probably shouldn't make a beer through water that you wouldn't enjoy drinking out of a faucet. But at the same time, there are elements to the water that are more conducive to yeast growth. You have to have some residual minerals in there. There's things that have to exist just for the beer to work.
Fun fact, Sully Sullivan at Pints and Court says the water from the Big Sioux Aquifer in Brookings is very similar to the water in Newcastle, England.
I was talking to a guy who ran the world's largest apiary here about 10 years ago, and he gave me a mead recipe. And he'd spent a bunch of time over in England, and he was also a chemist, and he was telling me how the water from the Big Sioux Aquifer is the exact same water chemically as where they pull it out of the ground to brew Newcastle with.
When Beer Untapped continues, we turn from water to yeast.
From the land of sky blue water, from the land of pines, lofty balsams, comes a beer refreshing, hands a beer refreshing.
Welcome back to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. We turn now to the final key ingredient, the most important, yeast. Without it, there is no beer. One beer maker put it quite nicely. Brewers make sugar water, yeast makes beer. Yeast, those little microbes that come to the party and make beer possible.
The yeast is really key. Yeast, of course, wasn't fully understood when brewing started. The monks knew that they would use water, malt, and hops, and the term they used for the mystical or even spiritual component of beer is that it was actually called God is good. That is one complete word. They would say God is good, and that was the component of yeast. They knew if they used some beer from an old batch and put it into a new batch, things would happen, and things would ferment.
Seth says there are 2 major kinds of yeast.
Just like water, yeast became very regionalized, so brewers, not knowingly, would selectively harvest the yeast and ended up developing these strains of yeast that had really particular flavors and really particular fermentation qualities. The major families of yeast would be ale yeast and lager yeast.
Lager yeast, when fermented properly, is clean and crisp. Ale yeast can bring all kinds of flavors to the mix.
There's all kinds of things that these little microbes can produce from the flavor compound. They single-handedly, the yeast itself single-handedly probably brings the most flavor components to the party. If you were to look at a flavor wheel of beer, a small part of it is the actual hops, the small part of it is the malt, and then a majority of it actually come from the yeast, whether it be apple flavors or banana flavors or bread flavors. We go on and on and on about all these different qualities of yeast.
The Belgians may be the masters of yeast, cultivating many different strains of wild yeast for their amazing ales. And Drew Eklund says you can try some out at Brookings Liquor Store.
Boulevard, Tank 7. It's kind of an American take on the traditional farmhouse ale. It's a Belgian style, but it's hoppier than most. Some would almost call it a Belgian IPA. The next one I have is from Goose Island, Sophie, and this one's also very different. It's a Saison. It has a nice blend of Belgian yeast, spices, citrus, and it's got a really strong effervescence to it. It's almost like champagne-like. Just got this next one in. It's called Petrus Aged Pale. This is a sour beer. This is very sour. It's flavors of sharp lemon, green apple. It also has some white wine notes.
He says they also have a great selection of traditional Belgian ales. One other note from Drew this week, they're taking names for a limited beer that should be arriving come November.
Alaskan Brewing Company's limited seasonal. It's called their Smoked Porter. Just call us or stop in and drop your name and number, and we'll put you on the list.
There's a party here with Belgian beer. They know how to brew. A Westmalle Triple, an Augustine, or a Hoegaarden Grand Cru. So don't worry, be happy.
To wrap it all up this week, Tyler Luckhurst with the Mike Tap Handle Beer of the Week at Pints and Quarts in Brookings. It's a big beer from Rogue.
7-hop American IPA comes in at a bold 8.02 alcohol percentage with a 90 IBU. Which stands for International Bitterness Unit, so it has that beautiful bitter hop that a lot of the hop heads enjoy. And of course, in the name, brewed with 7 different hop varieties, which provides for a very well-balanced IPA.
That's it for Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Remember to like the Facebook page, where you'll find additional content and giveaways. Next week, commercially brewing a beer. How does that work? Drink local and drink responsibly. Thank you for listening to this archived edition of Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Feel free to listen to other episodes, and if there's anything you'd like us to talk about on a future show, please let us know. Thanks again.